Hello, hello and welcome. I have today a small presentation to on local AI. I think that what I want to talk today is about these tools that I believe that are going to be more and more prevalent on everybody's homes, but also at the enterprise level. I think that companies will sooner rather than later adopt this type of technology, mostly because they simply cannot live with the cost, tokenization, the lack of security. And then I think we're going to see, I believe that there's a pattern here that is, we've been on this particular situation before, and simply we will adjust to exactly the same pattern again, the same way that we've done in the past. Um, so let's get started. So I think that firstly, I need to get just a little bit of context. Um, the mainframes and the personal computers. So mainframes would exist some time ago, and they follow a clear pattern. Companies would rent time on these massive mainframes that were too big and too complex for personal use, but then and they were built for industrial applications essentially. But then the personal computer came up, and instead of shrinking the mainframe, instead of trying to make the mainframe a miniature of trying to miniaturize the mainframe to put it in the home, what we could understand is that we don't need a mainframe. We just need a few of the tasks of the mainframe. So we have a much more modest, underpowered device. However, it would be excellent at personal tasks like calendars and spreadsheets and text editing and even it's a much more B2C approach. So today mainframes and PCs do coexist. Think of the cloud as being the modern mainframe, which is vastly more powerful, and your laptops overlaps with it in many ways, but also handles things that the cloud cannot do, so and vice versa, right? So that's somewhat the same thing. I want to come to this particular signal. This is John Ternus. He's now the Apple's former VP of hardware. He is set to become the new CEO. He's the person behind products like the AirPods, the MacBooks, the Apple Watch. He's a true hardware specialist, unlike the previous leaders who came from product or software. So this is a man who is connected to the chip. So this shifts the signal that the race to local AI is on. As of June 2026, right now, I think the API tokens are getting more expensive and the divide between local and cloud premium is widening. So I think that history is about to repeat itself. And I think that Apple is signaling that. I think they know exactly what the direction is going to be, and we'll see that happening shortly. So I think let's have a look at some practical tools in terms of the local AI. So for the first part, so raw models are essentially just weights and numbers, right? So you need interfaces to interact with them intelligently. Here's some options that you can use in order for you to interact with these models. And I appreciate that most people do know this, but I'm just trying to set the basic context. So Llama CPP is a Python library for running local models directly on your code, and that will become helpful if you have a Python script that you want to run things on. I would say you also can run on top of transformers, and similarly, Llama CPP you can run them with a bunch of different libraries these days on Python anyway. But um, I think that this is a name that a household name, let's say. All right, so Llama is more turn the key solution. So you basically install this CLI interface, and you just have the models running out of your own CLI. It's very small, it's efficient. It often pulls in very low-sized models, which are optimized for the CPU. So it's a great tool for you to experiment, and even sometimes to even just connect to not just experiment, but actually you can connect a bunch of other services to Olama directly, and that is also something that I'm exploring myself. Uh, Unsloth Studio. This is a more polished, like web-based interface that pulls a wide range of models from Hugging Face, and you can decide. Uh, is there's a lot more to it, but I guess I could argue that it would be a much more polished version than just a CLI version of the interface. All right. So to run these efficiently on the CPU, you should use Giga files, which are files that are optimized for the CPU use. The model must fit your available RAM because, like for example, a 4 billion parameter model in 4-bit quantization uses roughly about 3.5 to 5 gigabytes. Okay, so it always always need to leave headroom for the OS, so that you have to take that into account. Quantization. So this reduces precision of the model, rounding it from the 32-bit floats, which is the normal size of it, down to 8 or to 4, or sometimes even lower than that. And then that shrinks the size and to boost the speed because you can run the model much, much faster. And obviously, the trade-off is quality. Now, popular strong options include things like the Llama 3.5. Some of the Mistral class models are very good as well. A little bit verbose if you want to try something that gives you a lot of like text back or talk back if you want to think like that. The Gemma 4 class of models these days, especially now, June 2026, has proven to be fantastic. Gemma 4 has a series of of sorry has a series of models that for almost every level, so one gigabyte, so 1 gig, 2 gig, 4 gig, 6, 9, 12. I think there's a bunch of them. Some of them are for instructions, learning. So there's a bunch of them. They release them, and they have the capacity to only activate part of the model, which makes them that kind of copies the architecture from DeepSeek and Qwen, I think, where you have a big model, but you only activate part of it at any given times to save memory, I guess. I don't know the exact um, the exact way in which these things work, but that's what I'm understanding. Um, okay, so size in terms of models, I think that's about it for now. You need to understand what it is that you get out of a quantized model. In some cases, it's more important to have. I mean, quantization reduces the model, but so you can have a model with lots of parameters that, and yet quantized is more important to have it with more parameters than the quantization, if that makes any sense. So you have better quality the more parameters you have, but the quantization can affect it depending on how you use it. So you can have a heavily parameterized and then heavily quantized model and still have a very good model anyway, which is the case of Gemma. All right, so Hugging Face think of Hugging Face as the GitHub of open source AI models, including tons of giga files. It's also the home of the Transformers library, which is where the T from GPT comes from. So uh, the T in GPT, generative P transformer. I think uh, I forget what the P stands for, and funny enough. Um, and it really offers not just the access to these models, but it has excellent from zero to hero courses on AI, which I did myself, and I highly recommend them. Um, it's on huggingface.co, and you just check it out. Um, Now, local models shine in some scenarios. I think that this is where some of the stuff that we're gonna try is really good. So the you can pass private documents or personal conversations because you get access to full privacy, right? And you're not paying for any tokens. And you'd argue saying, well, it takes longer. It does take longer for now, and depends on what kind of rig you've got, depends on whether or not um, you have access to any type of GPU. And even in those cases, I can argue that you can rent the GPU outside of your own laptop. So there's options here. Also, quick categorization. These things are fantastic for that type of thing. You give it a list to a database or tremendous amounts of data, and it will categorize things so with not just deterministically, but specifically with intention. So, uh, what the questions here that you want to answer is what kind of uh, um, sentiment or what sort of because any other deterministic script from Python will probably outperform AI. What you want to use it for categorization is when you have to do judgment calls, right? So for personal assistants like OpenClaw or Hermes, which I'm currently running, is also fairly good. Although I have to say that you would run into problems because of the context window. Hermes tries to inject a lot of context, and it makes these local models run out of space very easily and very quickly. And so it's not, for the moment, I haven't found any particular models very good for the personal assistants. But on CPU only setups, like simple generative tasks, they work great. So it's just for more complex agentic workflows and stuff that you need a little bit more resources. But anyway, so practical examples like, you can do podcast summaries, you can do the stock management or analysis, home energy, the usage. You can run all of these things on the Raspberry Pi or at the enterprise level maintenance predictions. That sort of stuff is microclimate analysis and workflow optimizations. These things are easy to accomplish, and they're not even like a big complex workflow. So things that you can go to and try today. So for example, uh, let's take sensitive internal documents, right? Like meetings or roadmaps, and process them locally instead of sending them to the cloud to APIs like ChatGPT and Claude or Gemini. And the reason for that is obviously it's quite obvious. It's security. And it's also that you can um, also train your own models on this type of data. It's not far-fetched, and it's not a far-fetched idea that you can train some of the models to have uh, outputs that you expect. So this is all possible. Um, you can summarize reports. You can extract some insights from the meetings. You can again categorize your documents. And just a note, you can build an intelligent knowledge base and, for example, load the documents into a directory. Like you can use RAG, which is essentially a vector database, an MCP or a graph database. But the models don't read text. They don't do anything. They are a brain in a jar. So they don't read PDFs. So you have to convert and extract the PDFs first, right? So I think that this is kind of a sticking point for many people. Models don't do anything. They're literally just a brain in the jar, and everything else is tooling and harnesses that you put around these models so that to provide what they need in terms of context and clear English that then gets embedded, transformed into numbers so that they can process that information. So some of the great stuff that we get from premium tools are to do with the premium models like ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity, etc. You get great tooling with those providers because and not because but the fact that they've got great tooling is a great harness for them in terms of their commercial success, but also it really enhances the experience of the model. So when you're running locally the models, you don't get the satisfaction of go and find on the internet things about you know uh, cuisine or Indian cuisine or anything like that because it just doesn't have that sort of ability. Or you can't just provide it with a bunch of PDFs and say, "Tell me what happened here." But so everything has to be uh, built by you, and that's where things like Unsloth and maybe even Olama come in because they start to bring in their own tools. But I would argue that you could build some of those tools easily, and some of those yeah, they are commercially very good tools that you can't really easily overcome. Um, so yeah, and that's the final bit of the presentation. I just want to say um, the idea of local AI, like I said, like in terms of summary, is the same pattern as we had before. So we're going from the mainframe onto the PCs. The even Apple had the same exact experience as well of going from machines that were too big into their own versions of the PCs into miniaturization of having the iPod or having yeah, maybe the iPod was a one of the great miniaturizations of how do you bring a large spec operating system into something smaller. And these are product visions, but they are patterns that repeat themselves. And so having cloud and the laptop, having the mainframe in the laptop, having the LLM in the cloud and having the LLM at local disposal, they won't do the same thing, but they will do things that they can't do, so and vice versa. So the local won't do what the cloud, the frontier model will do, but vice versa, the frontier model won't be interested in doing tasks that are very particular to you. And currently we are in that particular moment of transition. So every day, so if I did this presentation in say 15 days from now, I, I'm pretty sure that I will have uh, some other examples that I'm not thinking about it now, with the space is moving very fast. Um, but I would advise everybody. I think that this sounds ominous, but I would like to advise pretty much everybody to just have a good experimentation locally with local AIs because it's definitely gonna uh, become part of your everyday. And that's it. I hope that you enjoyed the presentation. I'm gonna do some more examples and I'll present something new soon. Thank you very much. Catch you later.